Bienvenida, Gitanjali Rao. Welcome, Gitanjali Rao.
Hola, Puebla. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So I'm here to share my story, my journey, a little bit of why I'm here, and what I want all of you to take away from today's conversation. So here's a woodpecker, right? It's this animal that we all know. The biggest thing about a woodpecker is that it hammers against a tree up to 12,000 times a day at max, right? When we look at this, how do these woodpeckers not have head injuries, right? From every 12 to 18 seconds that they're doing this constantly, how is nothing happening to their head? How are there no head injuries? How is there no long-term brain impact? Now, something new I just learned is that woodpeckers have long tongues that can wrap around their neck to basically increase the blood flow to their head. And what that allows it to do is protect their brain in a way that it limits the amount of head injuries possible. Using that, scientists have created something called the Q collar, which uses the same concept to be able to basically wrap around the jugular vein in your neck and protect any sort of blood so that it flows to your head. Now, the reason I share this concept is because this is what innovation is. It's using existing things out there, existing things we see in nature. For example, this concept of biomimicry, using things like woodpeckers to create the latest innovative solutions of today and tomorrow. But this story isn't alone. I want to share one more. There's this, man from India named Ali Shahbaz who created the iodine-coated life-saving dot for women with iodine deficiency in India. So it changes the symbolic Indian bindi into something that every woman can wear so that they can manage the iodine in their body. Now, these are people, big organizations and small individual people coming up with solutions to tackle some of the biggest problems of today and tomorrow and creating an impact altogether. That's what innovation is. But before we dive into it, I want to share a little bit about myself. My name is Gitanjali Rao. I'm 16 years old. I'm from the United States. I'm a student, author, and a promoter of STEM. But before everything on that slide here, I'm a student, because that's what's most important, right? I'm very passionate about the world around me. I like making a difference. I like changing the world for the better. But before all of that, I'm a learner. I like learning things. I like changing the way things that are learned. And I'm a curious human being, and that's exactly what I'm here to share with all of you today. A new way of thinking, a new way of innovating, and a new way of coming up with ideas. But to kick this off, here is what the future looks like. Now, as you see right now, it probably just looks like a couple of images on a screen, correct? Now, we're seeing things like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, nanotechnology, 5G technology, and so much more. But the biggest thing here is that the future isn't just the technology that we have in front of us. It's what we make out of it, right? In these next couple of slides here, I'm going to share some of the growing technologies that I've seen and learned about. But without our impact and our influence on these technologies, these are just the latest work just laying around there. So how do we make these ideas come to life? How do we harness the power of these technologies to solve global problems? Now, here are some of the growing technologies that I'll talk about. I'll go over them in a very broad manner. The first one is freeze-dried cell technology. Recently, scientists have found out a way to detect for, all sorts of diseases, one that we all know, which is COVID-19, in real time with a mask. So with just activating these cells through water, it's able to essentially provide real-time detection to see how much COVID has entered your mask. Along with this, we've heard of 2D printing. We've heard of 3D printing recently. We're introducing this fourth dimension, which is time or space, which means this is a 3D printed object, but instead it's changing the way it's shaped, the way it's built, with time, with water, with space, with a fourth dimension. sorry. Well, anyway, the third thing is we're looking, oh, we have another mic. Does this one work? Great. Okay, the third thing we're looking at here is GPT-3, which is a way to mimic human written text. It's based on this, big branch that we all know, which is artificial intelligence. But essentially what this means is you can feed it any piece of literature, for example, Shakespeare, and it's able to write another Shakespeare novel. It doesn't know what it's writing, but it's able to write it. And that's exactly what technology looks like. And here are these last two. They might seem familiar to you. And the reason why is because they're recent technologies that scientists have developed in these past 2 years when we've been combating the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? We're seeing things like digital contact tracing and all sorts of applications of mRNA technology, right? These are the growing technologies of today and tomorrow, and they're being used in the most practical of applications out there. Now, let's dive into a little bit of my journey before we get into anything else. My journey of innovation has been about using all sorts of these technologies and creating simple yet effective solutions. My journey started when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I came up with solutions. To share them here, I've created a snakebite diagnostic tool called Asclepius, named after the Greek god of medicine. And basically, it's able to diagnose for snake bites using thermography technology or heat signatures. And it tells you the severity of a bite, if it's venomous or not, and what type of venom is injected. I've created a tool called Pollen Screen, which is a wearable device in necklaces and hats, which uses electrostatic ions to repel or attract pollen ions so it never enters your nose. Now, along with that, I've created a black box screening tool. So there is, with all these airplanes going missing, for example, I'm sure you've heard of the Malaysian Airlines, a lot of which the research is resurfacing right now. Many, researchers and scientists have to go look for the black box and take it out of the water or whatever remote locations. And now, based on that, I've created a way that you can basically log into it remotely using underwater laser communication to pull out any sort of information. Below that, I've created a tool called Laser Screen, which absorbs any sort of laser light from an airplane windshield using rubidium atoms bound together in a specific way. And on the right side is an early version of one of my anti-cyberbullying services, which is now called Kindly, but at the time called Salus Chat, which helps to detect for cyberbullying using a bank of words that already exists. But it has been improved since, and we'll talk about that soon. But the work that I'm most known for is my work with lead detection. So in the United States, the Flint water crisis affected, hundreds of thousands of people, and still is every single day, because of the lack of clean drinking water that they have. Now, lead in water is a growing problem, and it's all over the world. And not just lead, tons of other heavy metals and ions out there. So I created a tool called Tethys, which helps to detect for lead in drinking water faster and more inexpensive than the current tools. It's built on carbon nanotube sensor technology, and it sends all the data to your mobile phone on an application that I've created as well. And I'm happy to say in these past 6 months, Tethys is now a patented device, and I'm excited to be working with more people on making this so that this is something everyone can use. Thank you. Thank you for that. I've also created another tool called Epione, which helps to diagnose for prescription opioid addiction at an early stage, which is a growing problem we see today with over $500 billion in economic costs spent every single year. With Epione, I wanted to look for a way to create the first ever tool to clinically diagnose for addiction. And after research is fully completed, that is exactly what it will be. So Epione uses the standard techniques of gene editing as well as protein detection to look for addiction produced by a specific receptor in our body called the mu-opioid receptor. And since I love building apps so much, it sends all the data on an easy-to-read application on your phone, which you can then share with a remote technician for easy reading of results as well. Now, my latest work, which it's not that I don't want to tell you about it, it's that I don't have enough content to tell you too much about it, but I'm looking for a way to detect for cryptosporidium, which is a waterborne parasite, using genetically engineered bioelectric sensors. So it takes in a DNA input and gives you an electrical output, so that you're easily able to read the content of this parasite in drinking water. And the really interesting thing is, once this breakthrough hopefully makes progress there, this sort of technology can be used to detect any sort of bacteria or parasite in drinking water, which is exactly what I'm going for with these bioelectric sensors. Now, last but not least, in partnership with UNICEF, I've created a tool called Kindly, which is a digital public good, and it uses artificial intelligence and natural language understanding to pick out words or phrases that may be considered bullying. And it is a self-driven, self-motivated tool for teenagers to be able to use. So think of it as the spell check for cyberbullying, that anybody is able to use this to double check themselves. And this being an API, it can be invoked in a lot of different front ends that people can use as well. And the very interesting thing about Kindly is a lot of things that I heard is that everyone wanted to be a part of the solution, especially when it came to an AI tool. And since it's built on a self-learning algorithm, on the Kindly landing page, which is included in that link right there, anyone can go and contribute and respond to these prompts, and then train the AI engine so that anyone can be a part of the solution, which was a very creative approach that I wanted to take on it as well. Now, saying all of that, enough about me and all of these solutions that I've been working on. But another branch of what I do is working with students across the world. I think a big thing that I've realized is that I am so fortunate to be where I am, right? And I've had the support and the resources in front of me. And I wanted to provide those same opportunities for students everywhere. I've worked with students in New York, to Nepal, to Cambodia, to the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. And every new place that I work with, I see this new group of innovators, bringing their ideas to life, their passions to life, and their excitement to life. They just need the support. They need the fostering. And that's exactly what I try to do for them. I've worked with about 58,000 students across 39 countries, as well as 6 continents, everything except for Antarctica. And I'm excited to grow that number even more. I think that's really where this should come from, right? Not just me. There's not just one Gitanjali out there. There's thousands and thousands of kids out there who have ideas, who have passions, who bring these ideas to life. They just need the support. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to do. Now, along with this, I want to share a concept that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, or have heard very briefly. Now, you can look at those bullet points on the screen, but the biggest thing that I want to bring your attention to is the thing in red at the bottom, which says, design thinking should solve big problems. We see design thinking into something that has frankly turned into a buzzword over the years, and I want to bring it back as not a word, but as a concept. We need to use design thinking to be involved in everything that we do. Design thinking should be an everyday part of our life. Now, using that, I wanted to create some sort of process that everyone can use. Not just students, but also teachers, also parents, educators everywhere, to understand what innovation really is. Now, the first thing you see here is, why aren't all the arrows straight, right? Why are there so many arrows everywhere? And I'll get to that, but this is a simple 5-step process that I like to look at innovation as. Observe, brainstorm, research, build, and communicate. I share this with all the students that I work with in my workshops, and I'm sharing it with you here today. Because this is what innovation is supposed to be. Not a linear flow of words, but instead a mixed up jumble of arrows. For the sole reason that this isn't a step-by-step prescriptive process. This is a guide for anybody to understand how they can be involved in innovation and how they can be an innovator. There's a 6th step here, and I think the arrows represent that properly, and that's iteration. I'm proud to say that I'm here because I've failed more times than I've succeeded, and that's the biggest part about innovation. We should be done accepting success as the only success. Failure should also be success. We should take failure into account in everything that we do, and we should stop stigmatizing it. Failure is the reason that I'm here right now, and hopefully many other students will be here in the future. Now, saying all of that, I want to share these 3 branches that I share with every student, and I like to share with all of you, which is how to get your ideas out there. Awareness, mentorship, and internships and research. The first thing is awareness. Leverage the power of social media. Leverage what it does, and every student can bring their ideas to life with spreading awareness. Even if it's not a finished solution, talk to people about it. Second thing is mentorship. This audience is some of the best people out there to bring these students' ideas to life, right? And so if I'd like to request one thing from all of you, it would be to seek a mentee and ask them what they're passionate about and mentor them in those areas, even if it's not your expertise, right? A mentor doesn't have to be someone who's an expert. A mentor just needs to be someone you can lean on, especially when you need the help for it. And last but not least, leverage this power of internships and research. At the age of 6 or 7, I was going to my parents' work. I was reaching out to people, and I was saying, hey, I would love to be a part of this, right? And that's exactly what it should be. So I reach out to more organizations and say, hey, I think we need to do more to involve more students, more elementary schoolers, more middle schoolers, more high schoolers into what you do. They see that real-world experience and recognize that anyone can do it. Now, saying all of that, if you didn't take anything away from today's conversation, I like to leave everyone with 5 different things. The first one is aspire to be a lifelong learner. Never stop learning. That drives everything that I do. Secondly, innovation can't work on a deadline, and you can't expect anyone to think that way. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes passion. Once it turns into a chore, it's no longer innovation. Third, find mentors and be one, and I think I stressed that one enough today. Fourth, don't be afraid to ask questions, right? A curious person is a successful person. And last but not least, have a problem-solving mindset. I've grown up with this idea, and my parents have taught me this idea that if you don't like how the world works, change it. Change something that you don't like out there. And that's exactly what I try to do every single day. Now, to leave you all here, I want to share a quote from my favorite scientist, Marie Curie. She says, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood." And our generation is growing up in a place where we're seeing problems that have never existed before. And innovation isn't necessarily an option anymore. It's a necessity. And each and every one of us have to be a part of it. And going back to that quote that Madame Curie said, I think that's why we're all here. To fear less and understand more. To be passionate about our future and to solve more problems out there. So I want to thank you all for your time. I want to share my book as well. Thank you so much.